Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Lynn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good day and welcome. Thank you for joining us on today's edition of Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Leon Tabak. I will moderate today's discussion, and our subject is how we might help our students gain the courage and the skills to talk about difficult questions together. I was prompted to propose this topic when earlier this year the college Democrats and the college Republicans at Cornell College, where I teach, asked me to moderate a series of debates for them. I met with the students to ask what topics we should cover in each one of the debates. And the students listed a set of topics they did not want me to ask them questions about. I was struck, astounded by the fact that the most politically engaged students on our campus were afraid of broaching certain questions. So today, to help me in discussing this topic, I have three guests. This is Erin Broich,
yep.
Erin Broich, who is the chaplain at Mount Mercy University. Say hello.
Hello.
And next to Erin is Tom Hicks, the Dean of Students at Coe College.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. And Genevieve Migely teaches philosophy at Cornell College and is a longtime colleague of mine. Okay.
Good to be here.
All right. So my first question for you is, I proposed the topic and invited you, and now I want to know if this is a familiar experience. Is this something that is my concern reasonable? What's been your experience with students showing some reluctance or anxiety about approaching difficult questions? Any one of you to start here? Erin, or Genevieve, is kind of your main job is to teach argumentation.
It is. It
so
is
tell
my
us
main job.
how this shows up in your experience.
I would say for me, within the classroom, I've had less problems.
Uh-huh.
They sort of know when they enter into a class that is a philosophy course that they are going to be challenged, that they are going to be questioning their basic assumptions and beliefs. So long as I set the stage and set their expectations, I find that sort of mitigates students being offended or disrespected. You have to set a proper code of behavior and code of conduct within the classroom. And so in the proper setting the proper form for how we're going to go about and talk about these things, students aren't feeling attacked or targeted or feeling vulnerable. Instead, they want to talk about it. Instead, they think that these are issues, okay, this is what we're going to discuss. This is on the table. We can talk about this in a respectful, civil manner. Outside the classroom, I think, is a different issue.
Okay. Now, Erin, some people in our audience might not understand all the roles of a chaplain at one of our colleges. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the various ways in which you interact with students at Mount Mercy.
Yeah, I interact with students on a lot of different levels. The main one being the spiritual presence that the campus ministry, mission and ministry department has on campus, upholding the Catholic identity of the school, while also creating an atmosphere of welcome and invitation to non-Catholic students, faculty, and staff. I work with students face-to-face. Students will come to me for guidance, spiritual help. Sometimes if they just need someone to talk to, I'm there for them. And I also oversee all of the spiritual and religious services on campus. I help with the service opportunities we provide for students, and oversee our peer ministry organization, which is students that are involved in campus ministry and help us plan our events and decide how our presence is going to be felt on campus.
And Tom, I'm assuming that you, like Erin, you're involved both in creating programming and then you have some interaction one-on-one with students.
That's correct. One of my roles is advising Student Senate, where hot topics and big issues come up from time to time. But I'll agree with Genevieve here that outside of the classroom, in a really practical sense, students living together, I feel like over the past 10 years or so, they're less willing to address some important issues with each other. And so whether it's roommate conflicts or if it's a political discussion, they either are unwilling to engage in that, avoid it altogether, and seek out other alternative options, living with a friend or getting a parent involved instead of engaging that person directly, their roommate or whoever it may be, somebody within another organization. And so, yeah, we don't have the ability to set up a nice code or structure all the time outside of the classroom to let students do that. And so there's a little more of a challenge there.
Have you seen change over time, do you think, Genevieve?
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially, I think peer pressure has a lot to do with it. I think students are more anxious or fearful about speaking their mind if they know it's going to have a certain reaction. They'd like to go along with what everyone else would say in certain respects. They don't want to be too controversial because, I mean, in our days of social media, you can be labeled, you can be stigmatized on a small liberal arts campus especially. You can ruffle feathers that you don't mean to. Things can be taken out of context. You know, suddenly you're a public figure by making one comment because of our social media.
Right, so that's something I've been thinking about is the fact that a comment that might once have been just you and me,
Right.
or you and me and 4 or 5 of our friends in a corner of the cafeteria, might now be published for the whole world and become part of a permanent record from which we cannot escape. So how do you address that, or has this been a concern for you too?
You know, one of my thoughts with that is maybe on the other side, students already know what their peers believe before they even meet them because they've already seen it posted somewhere, and therefore may just avoid that person to begin with. And I think there's some emerging research around we are living more integrated in our cities, in our towns, on college campuses than ever, but we're able to shelter ourselves much more than ever by only choosing certain media that we follow or see, and therefore can still create a bubble for ourselves that's still pretty comfortable.
So Erin, I think about this sometimes. I make a comparison to driving. I think there are a lot of very mild-mannered people who once they get inside that glass and steel bubble, all of a sudden they're shouting words that they would never speak face to face. And I think I'm surprised sometimes that that colleagues in the professional world email me something, they want me to read something that they've posted, and we've only had a dialogue about the computer science I teach or something, but then I go to their personal website and I see what they're commenting on about public affairs, and it's not just that they have strong opinions, it's that they have strong opinions rudely expressed, and I've been shocked this way sometimes. Is this something that you've dealt with here?
I can definitely see that happening. Students and faculty and staff, I've found, don't often feel comfortable expressing their real opinions and beliefs face to face with people anymore. It is that there's kind of that safety net and semi-anonymity with social media and being able to put something online, even if what you're putting online isn't exactly what you're displaying to the people immediately around you in real life. I think it can be a good thing and a bad thing. I think for students, especially who have difficulty expressing themselves, social media can be a really good outlet for them, but the trick is using it in a positive and constructive way that creates dialogue rather than a wall to hide behind where they can throw insults or derogatory statements out and feel that weird protection, even though we see it and we know they're saying it, but how we approach that and mold the use of social media is really important and really tricky. And I don't have a great answer for how to do that because I think we're still figuring it out ourselves, but yeah, it's definitely a trend that I see, not just among the students, but faculty and staff as well.
So asking students to write down their ideas is sometimes very helpful, I think. It gives them a time for reflection so that their remarks aren't as impulsive or off the cuff. Before this show, I looked at other university websites to find some guidelines for controlling these, or guiding these discussions on difficult issues, and using writing was a common theme there. So I'm sure that's part of Genevieve's work in philosophy.
Yes and no.
No?
Well, yes. I mean,
Okay.
there'll be the students who are more silent in class, but I like the philosophical discourse within the
Okay.
classroom.
Okay.
I want students to be engaged, to sort of understand what the proper form of argumentation is, to
Right.
be able to express themselves in a way where they can feel comfortable making a statement and making an argument. I mean, that's part of what I'm trying to teach them to do. I'm trying to teach them to think for themselves, and yes, there is the written, but there's something to be said for the actual dialogue. I mean, you have to have an open forum, you have to have an open discourse, otherwise, you're just talking to yourself. These things fall flat. I handle all the controversial issues. I mean, I did a philosophy of race and philosophy of gender class. We talk about sexuality, we talk about warfare, we talk about abortion, we talk about immigration, we talk about all those issues. And I want to hear the students in the classroom, what they think, what they feel, but to sort of have the proper form, the proper discursive form, to know what it means to make an argument, to know what it means to have an opinion and to have support for it, to make rational claims so it's not attacking someone else, so that they learn to be charitable, to be considerate, to be respectful.
I think a
So
lot-
yes, written's good, but I think verbal is also good.
So this might be an obvious comment, but I think a lot of young people at age 17 or 18 years come to college, and the only place they've heard the word argue is from parents who are telling them, don't argue, especially if they have lots of siblings. They're being told, don't argue all the time. And then we have to teach them that argument has a different meaning,
Yes.
and it's not just about quarreling and sniping with one another.
Right, there's proper form. And that's what it is. And I think on social media, the things we worry about is that it does digress into the other form of argument, that we need the proper form of argument. It's not the content of the speech. We should be encouraging our students to speak freely about what they believe. It is how they express themselves. It is the manner in which they do it. I think that really, that's where we need to get better at it, just as a whole on college campuses.
Without sounding too old or of a different generation, I don't know if that has been modeled well by our culture or media, and I'm not looking to pass off blame, but I think it adds an extra challenge now that we didn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago, that we need to start adding in sustained dialogue programs. Or Chico State University in California has a town hall format that they use in order to deal with all kinds of sensitive issues and topics on campus. And so many campuses are going towards that and integrating it into their academic programs or their first year programs in order to give students a foundation to be able to have conversations like this over the next 4 years and hopefully for the rest of their lives. But that's not something that we thought of or felt like we needed to do 10, 15 years ago. That's a new trend on some campuses.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think part of it too is because students don't know how to have these arguments in a constructive, respectful manner, they don't feel that there's any, outside of the classroom anyway, they don't feel that there's safe space for them to express their beliefs because they will be attacked, and it won't be a dialogue, it'll be you're wrong and here's why, without any opportunity for back and forth. And I think you look at our current political atmosphere, and that's the model that they're seeing. And if faculty and staff, and we don't have these programs on campus to teach them, this is how you have a constructive dialogue. You can disagree, but can still build off of each other. They have no idea how to go about it, and so they keep it locked down because they're avoiding that conflict.
So I've been concerned as well by colleagues on the faculty who have admitted to me their anxiety about admitting their opinions on important questions, and those who feel like they're in a minority and still are afraid to speak up, though they've already been awarded tenure, they've already been promoted to the highest rank, and I'm not sure what they're afraid of. Some people tell me I should be more afraid, but I wonder whether the faculty can model the kind of discussions we want for our students better. I think on my own campus, maybe we should construct or organize some such discussions that would highlight differences of opinion rather than, I mean, sometimes it's important that we all speak with one voice. There are some values that are common that we want to be shared by the whole institution. But it would be good to highlight the fact that there are members of our faculty who respect one another, work with one another productively, but disagree on questions that are important to both of them.
I think being able to show students that this isn't a zero-sum conversation or a binary conversation would be nice, because I think they don't see a whole lot of that outside of our institutions, unfortunately. And so starting there, I mean, that's kind of some low-hanging fruit in my opinion, that just showing that somebody doesn't have to walk away right and somebody doesn't have to walk away wrong, that we can share and develop some discourse that allows us to respect each other and maybe have future conversations.
Well, and I think that that's the main thing, is to show them what it means to have an actual open dialogue about something. Just as you're saying, there's no one set conclusion. The reason why there's diverse opinions is because the issues are complex. There are strengths and weaknesses to every position and arguments, and those have to be laid out. Instead, you just get the conclusion, I think X or I think Y. They don't see the underlying reasons behind them. So I think you're right. I think something where we could model for our students what it means to have divergent viewpoints and opinions, to show what they're based upon, and then to evaluate, criticize, and compare with each other. Allow the students to see that, allow them to ask questions of us, of faculty members, to see that even we aren't on some pillar, that we don't just state our opinion and just think that that is the end of the story, to see that there is more to it. I think that that would be a good modeling effort, definitely.
So Erin, there's this conversation I had with the college Democrats and the college Republicans. They asked me to, how we were going to divide up these different debates, what themes would we cover in each week, and I said, well, the big issue, and one of the big issues in this country and in countries around the world this year is immigration. We should have a question about immigration. And my students said, we can't talk about immigration because there might be an immigrant in the audience. And I said, can we talk about taxation? There might be a taxpayer in the audience. And I'm worried that we've defined prejudice to mean any unflattering generalization about a protected group. And it's kind of, if you have an opinion, even if it's qualified, even if it's well-grounded, if it offends, it's prohibited. And I wonder how we get past that. So in the end, in our debate, they were happy to talk about the federal deficit because that was very far removed from their emotional lives.
Of course. Well, but I think that is the worry. I mean, you're so worried about offending someone else, and these are your peers. And so in one sense, they're trying to be respectful. They're trying not to offend, another person or another party. But on the other hand, what it shows is that they're not having the proper form of a dialogue. They would just be expressing their opinion without saying, here are the reasons why I think this. Of course, there are other sides to this issue, without making it an open forum and an open dialogue, rather than just making it seem like it would be attack. I mean, you can't be offended if somebody is giving you rational reasons for why they have the opinion they have, and then asking you in a dialogue form to respond. So long as there is discourse, I think it's okay. And then you don't have to worry if anything can be offensive. It's a matter of doing it, it's the form, doing it with respect.
I completely agree with that. And I also think we need to encourage our students to have these conversations, because without these conversations, the problems in our society are simply just not going to be fixed. We can't not have the conversations for fear of offending, because nothing changes that way. But if we create opportunities for these dialogues to happen where people can explain their views, and it's not just an attack, but this is what I believe, this is where I stand, but where are you coming from in this issue? And let's figure out maybe if there's a way for us to work together to come to some sort of mutually agreeable conclusion with it. But people are so afraid, I feel sometimes, to offend, that they just shut down the conversation completely, and nothing gets done in the end.
And you have to set expectations. I mean, I begin many of my classes these days saying, something I say will offend you, something you read will offend you. And then I say, I hope you disagree with it. I hope you are offended. I hope you see what viewpoints are based upon, rise to the challenge, think for yourself, come up with your own opinion, your own viewpoint, your own reasons for thinking whatever you think. To me, it is challenging and opening up a dialogue rather than just putting a claim out there unsupported and letting somebody feel marginalized or targeted. I think that's where the offense comes in.
So I'd like to broach the question of authority that derives from my personal experience. So people will claim that because of my ethnic origin, my religious background, my race, my sex, that I speak with an authority that can't be challenged. And we're teaching at liberal arts colleges. We're asking people to understand people who lived in the distant past, who live today in other countries and other cultures. And it seems to be a contradiction there to me when people claim that they have this unchallengeable authority because of their genetic background. Is that?
And sometimes I hear authority getting mixed up with privilege. There's great privilege that comes with my background. I know that, and I have to recognize that. And that's how I show up in a room like this, or in a classroom, or on campus. I have great positional power and societal power by just by being born to who I was born and what I look like. Authority, that positional power, is a little bit trickier. When I send a message to a student, it gets received a lot different than if another staff member that I work with sends a message that doesn't have my same title. And it's something I have to be aware of, but I want to be challenged. I know I'm not challenged as much as I am purely because of my title, or that authority that people put in me, or that has been given to me.
But this is students claiming authority themselves, claiming authority even over their professors sometimes. Mm-hmm. I was surprised in this last year, so I put my cards on the table here. You know, I subscribe to conservative philosophy, and some of my liberal professors came to me to tell me they were afraid of their students. They were afraid that they say the wrong thing, they put themselves on the, mm-hmm. you know, they claim a different set of lives matter, and all of a sudden their job is on the line for a misstatement or a statement that's deemed incorrect. And
again, I think it's a matter of setting the rules of engagement, if that makes any sense. There are plenty of times where I will say, by the way, this is my opinion. By the way, this is not my opinion. Here are my reasons for thinking it. Right. Anyone want to challenge it? Please, go ahead. And that shows them that I'm not standing there like I'm some authority. That shows them that I've been reflective about it, that I've thought about it, and I am asking them to be the same. I'm asking them to do the same, to be reflective, to be critical thinkers themselves. I think it's how it is presented. So it can be presented as a position of authority, and then they can be worried about it. But I think, again, just set the tone, set the stage. Mm-hmm. And then it doesn't have to be that way.
I think you're also getting at a side topic to this, that higher education is seen as a commodity, and it's a market item now. And students are
right.
savvier consumers, or are seen as consumers at times. And our institutions compete for those students, and are trying to sell a certain bill of goods and say one's better than the other, and we offer this. And when they feel like they haven't received that, or it's different than what they thought, they'll respond, or they'll say something or do something. It may not be the most appropriate way, but I think we see a lot of that nowadays, again, compared to years ago or a couple decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And at Mount Mercy, we have the added authority of the Catholic Church to keep in mind with all these things as well. So we do often get students and faculty and staff that are concerned that if they come to Mount Mercy, if they work at Mount Mercy, because of their own beliefs, their own background, they're going to be shut down, basically, because of the Catholic identity. So a big part of what my job also is to try and uphold the identity that the school has of being Catholic, but also say, but it is a Catholic university. It is a place for learning and exploration and to have these conversations. But it's a challenge sometimes because of the different stances that the church itself will take. But like Genevieve was saying, I'll often say, this is what the church says. I'll give my own opinion on the matter, whether or not I necessarily agree, so that students understand, oh, it is okay for us to not totally agree, to talk about these things, to think about these things, because I have that authority on the campus.
So I think I've heard some conversation on my campus about programming that's planned for the coming year to deal with these issues. You mentioned sustained dialogue. That's something we've done here. Maybe you could say a few words in these last few minutes about programs we have in place or that we are planning to try try to address this issue.
One of the things that we're really looking to try to focus on is instead of talking about or trying to figure out answers, just let's talk about values. And just shifting the question a little bit to values gets away from this binary. Somebody's right, somebody's wrong. Everybody has values, and where do they come from? How have you developed them? We know some students coming in, student development-wise, they get a lot of that from their family or their parents, and then we try to help open up a little bit to what might be possible throughout their college career.
You have any particular programs that you want to highlight here, or that you have coming up that you want to share with the audience?
You kind of put me on the spot.
If not, that's okay.
We don't have a ton this summer, but this fall we are having actually a faculty series where we'll have different events that are open to the public for the most part about immigration. Different speakers, different exhibits, things like that will be on campus throughout the fall semester, talking about kind of this hot topic issue a little bit.
Okay, I think we're very near the end here, and I'm going to ask for some final comments here. Maybe you want to talk about, so let me give you a menu of options for your 30 seconds that's left. Part of, I think, a good argument is to avoid impugning the motives of our opponents, right? Credit them with some good motives. Would you agree there?
Being charitable would be a good way to start, but I really think, for me, it's the basic rational tools of critical thinking and logic. I mean, I think that avoids the emotions, that avoids the rhetoric. I think that those are more solid in evaluating anything.
So as a freshman comes to you in September and is concerned about this, maybe complaining about how their students are treating this student, what would be kind of the first recommendation or you would give?
Just in hearing you say that, what Genevieve was saying, I was just thinking that we often say, let's try to assume the best in each other. Let's start there, and that allows us to start the conversation a little better. We also do a lot to set the rules of engagements for students. We have staff who are trained to help mediate, let students do that on their own. I would say programs like peer ministers, RAs, orientation leaders, do that on a peer level in a much different way than we can, and so we make sure we train them really well to be able to handle some of that and help those new students work through some of those issues together.
You get the last word, Erin?
Oh, no.
Well, to say thank you to our audience.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you all for joining us here today, and we see I think some hope for our campuses, and we see we have some good people who are working on these issues, helping our students learn to talk to one another and learning to argue constructively. And those of you at home see that this is happening both in the classroom and in the supportive staff at our colleges, in the Office of Student Affairs, in the chaplain's office, not only in the philosophy classes, but even in the computer science classes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.